March. Sorry, March 22nd. 2023 at 6:06 now. Please join me in a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag and to the
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ruth, will you- Can we call the roll?
Mayor Gatway.
Here.
Alderman Coslow.
Here.
Alderman Johnson.
Here.
Alderman Riley.
Here.
Alderman Sandstone.
Here.
Alderman Ungerbach.
Here.
Wandling.
Here.
Cole King.
Good evening. I'd like to start with a little brief history of Darden Prairie. We're going to go way, way back in the history. 2013. 2013, there was a proposal in front of the board for apartments. 3-story apartments, Barrett Haven. The outrage was so great that the developer pulled it back in 2013. I'm sure, I know Mayor Gotway lived in this area. I don't know if you lived here, because I know you voted for this past thing and EJ voted for it too. But you guys have voted yes for apartments in your neck of the woods? Or is it completely different? I know you can't answer me, but that's just brief history. They were declined, or they didn't even make it. But now, you would, for apartments back then? Okay, you've been mayor then. I can guarantee you that. And the other thing, just a quick one for now for Casey. You represent Ward 1. Everybody who stood up here from Ward 1 said no, no, no. So in other words, you don't represent the residents of Ward 1. Who are you representing? Because you sure in the heck didn't represent us. And I also asked all of you to go, I know Alderman Wandling got back to me, to go down to the St. Peter's Recplex, park in their parking lot and look at that 4-story apartment and go, man, I would love to wake up every damn morning and look at that out my back window. That would just be awesome. But only one person got back to me, because I'm assuming you guys wouldn't want it in your backyard. So don't put it in ours. Thank you.
Shannon Stoley.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Board of Aldermen. My name is Shannon Stoley. I am a director in the Wentzville School District Board of Education. I come here tonight because I oppose the tax abatement for this development. What you're considering diverts much needed revenue away from the Wentzville School District. I don't know if you're aware, but in 2021, there was a nationwide report and it found Missouri is among the top 10 states with the highest statewide per pupil revenue loss due to tax abatements. That is defunding public schools. Economic growth, while needed, does not justify carving out a large chunk of school budget over 12 years. That's $9.5 million. How is this in the best interest of our community and the best interest of our children? What you are choosing to potentially impacts the district in the most aggregate of everything we do for the more than 17,300 students and our staff. This is intentional if you move forward with this. This is an intentional disinvestment in the Wentzville School District. I know our superintendent has worked very hard to have a seat at the table, to have a say in incentives and development projects, so she can fully explain the true and full impact. Building but not doing so without supporting the Wentzville Public Schools is the very reason why people choose to live here and lay the roots where they live. The Wentzville School District is a critical stakeholder in the incentive policy or policies that you consider and any reforms and incentives you consider, and we should be part of these discussions. Our superintendent has tried effort repeated times to open up that channel of communication. Our boundaries represent the most active area in St. Charles County. And so if you choose to move forward with this decision, you will impact directly students. How many teachers they have, how big their classrooms are, how many routes we're going to have. Please think about that as you consider your decision tonight. Thank you.
Laura Gettemeyer.
Good evening, Laura Gettemeyer, 6th Juror Court. Residents were surprised when we heard that there was an additional meeting in March, so 3 meetings instead of a standard 2 meetings. We heard it was because something was left off the prior agenda, which was identified as a mistake or error from Knowles. But this seems like a big coincidence that this special meeting is being squeezed in right before the April elections. Regarding tax incentives, residents also heard that P&Z was unaware of the tax incentives associated with this development when they voted on it, wondering if P&Z had been aware of the tax incentives, if any P&Z members would have even voted for this project. Also, residents believe that the recommendations from P&Z should be treated more than just a suggestion to the Board of Aldermen, although some aldermen did cite their decisions as a reason why they voted on the development the way they did, meaning if the Board of Aldermen decides to go against P&Z's recommendations, P&Z's concerns or issues should be vetted with residents being shared this information. Recall too that this is not a blighted area that requires tax incentives to lure developers to build in our town. They aren't building in East St. Louis. It is Darden Prairie next to several well-appointed subdivisions. It is also important, again, to revisit the use of tax incentives for the proposed Prairie Encore development. What is exactly being requested? First, the developer is requesting 12 years of partial property abatement. Secondly, a community improvement district, CID, is requested, which will last 27 years. While both these tax incentives seem like an extremely long time, the transportation development district would be in effect for 4 decades, 40 years. The last 2 incentives would be burden our resident shoppers with higher sales tax for years and years, with a premium added to the sales tax rate, meaning our residents are footing the bill for these tax incentives, which seem like they're going to last forever. There is the pilot program, an acronym for Payment in Lieu of Taxes. It specifically addresses the St. Charles County Ambulance District and O'Fallon Fire Protection District, noting that they will receive 100% of the real property taxes that would be due. But what about Wentzville School District, St. Charles Community College, St. Charles County Library, for example? Who is diverting funds to them? Who is making them whole? The answer is no one. The developer says the apartments will probably be rented by older adults without children. They suggest that Wentzville School District won't be negatively impacted. But these are simply guesses by the developer, as no one can predict the future. Please consider the huge financial burden that we're placing on our citizens and community when considering all these tax incentives that are being proposed. And lastly, one rhetorical question. Has the city worked out the details with O'Fallon on access to the development from Bryant Road? We haven't heard anything about that. Thank you.
Danielle Tormala.
Good evening. I'm Danielle Tormala. I'm the superintendent of the Wentzville School District. I'd like to start by saying that I'm new to Wentzville this year. But when I came, I was very intentional about reaching out to all of our municipalities to begin a conversation about partnership, about open communication, and about coming together around the table, especially in situations like this, around a Chapter 100, new development, things like that. As you know, or may know, the Wentzville School District has been the fastest growing district in the state of Missouri for over 20 years. This is the first year in about 8 years that we're not putting a shovel in the ground to build a new building. But that pause we have is just for a short amount of time. I reached out to the city of Darden Prairie and I asked for a meeting. So on November 14th, my team and I came here to this city hall to sit and have a conversation with Mr. Knowles. We had a great conversation about partnership and moving forward and new developments and having a seat at the table for any conversation around a Chapter 100 or a TIF or anything like that. I was quite surprised when the first time I heard about this was yesterday afternoon. Today at 4:40, I had a conversation with the mayor because he had heard that I was coming. These are the first conversations the school district is being pulled in to have any conversation about this. So with this property development, with quick math, looking at if it were 100% residential, 100% commercial, using a quick calculation of 50-50, 50% residential, 50% commercial, over 12 years, that's just shy of $9.5 million in tax revenue that will be diverted away from our public schools. Every parent, resident, and taxpayer will potentially pay more in taxes in the future because this has been diverted. We know our district is growing. Our students in Darden Prairie go to Frontier Middle and to Liberty High School, both of which are maxed out. We just put a wing on Frontier Middle and they are at capacity. Liberty High School is at capacity. So it will not be long before we will be coming back to our voters asking for them to approve additional resources, facilities, expansions, accommodate the students of the Wentzville School District and specifically students from Darden Prairie. Providing tax breaks to developers of residential projects is unfair and inequitable to the homeowners who do not receive those same types of tax breaks. Please know it makes sense for any type of responsible use of tax abatement if you're bringing in a GM, a place like that that's going to be an economic generator for your district, for the community. GM came to the table with the district and nearly made us whole. Not quite, but almost. So I ask you, what I asked from the beginning is to have a seat at the table when these conversations are being had. To have a seat at the table so that we can have the best interest of not just Darden Prairie, but the district and the community that we serve.
Rick Anbine?
My name is Rick Angevine. I'm the CFO for the Wentzville School District. Wentzville School District is the fastest growing school district in the state of Missouri. Prairie View Elementary, Frontier Middle, Liberty High School. These serve this community. Frontier Middle School, you say partnership. Yes, we partnership with you. We just put a wing on Frontier Middle School for $14.5 million. They need a stoplight so that your parent can go into Frontier Middle School. Yes, we're putting between $500,000 and $1 million in to build a stop. Work with the community, and we would love the community to work with us. We predict that we will need between 200 million and 250 million in new square footage in the next 3 to 5 years to support area. We have less square foot per student than we did over 20 years ago. We are not overbuilding. We are less square footage than we've ever had for the last 20 years. 49% of our total revenues, just so you know, come from the revenues of property taxes. The cost for one student in 1 year is $11,626 per student. This area is the fastest growing school district in the state of Missouri. The type of tax incentive you're looking for, this abatement, is for people or is for cities, usually lower class cities, I'll have you know, that need to get people in. No, your property is valuable. Don't give it away. Somebody will eventually go there in the next 12 years. Where I live, yes, if you want to build there, I live in I live in Wildwood, by the way. I'm of course, working in Wentzville School District. But we don't give our property away. Businesses spend tons of money to build where we are because we have an asset. And you know what? Garden Prairie has an asset. They only have so much land, and I think they should value it. And yeah, there may not be a lot of children going in here, but let's face it, it's the school district working with you. It's that partnership. It's that school district that makes your property value what it is. The estimated property taxes, yes, $9.5 million. We don't have an exact number. I calculated this based on a $66 million project at 50% residential, 50% commercial. I just want to mention that I got a letter from a councilman in O'Fallon who's very upset about this, saying, okay, Garden Prairie's not going to pay their fair share, and they're going to push it on to the other cities, O'Fallon, Lake St. Louis, Forestell, Wentzville. When you give it what does that do? That pushes more money to be paid by the other cities. Don't start a war with the other cities. This is something that the other cities haven't done to you in their school district. Please don't do it to them. Please help us fund our schools without raising our taxes. Don't start a snowball where you don't pay city tax, you don't pay school taxes, so now other cities don't want to pay school taxes. No, that every city pay their fair share of the school tax. And yes, we have new buildings to build, and they're not free, and we don't want to raise your taxes. So just let the people who come in pay their fair share of taxes so that we don't have to raise the taxes in this district. Thank you.
David Zucker.
Mr. Mayor, members of the board, staff, David Zucker from the Bainbridge subdivision. I have 3 or 4 rhetorical questions. I am not expecting an answer from you, but if I can plant a seed of thought, then my mission will be accomplished. First question. The Circle K Corporation announced in October 2022 its plan to sell marijuana in states that allow recreational pot. Did the Board of Aldermen know about that before March 15th? Second question, who's on the hook to reimburse the fire district and the ambulance district if either exercise their power to claw back the tax abatement? Who pays that? I actually don't know, but the third question I think has been addressed by the previous speakers. What is the assessment that the impact to the Wentzville School District based on the proposed property tax abatement? Fourth question, has anyone assessed the impact on sales of Inverness in phase 3 by the approval of a 4-story apartment building next to the lots that are on the market today? And I just calculated what the sales tax would be in this district, 10.45, 10 cents, 10%, almost 10.5%. Does that cause anyone to reflect on the economic benefit forecasted for this development. I don't know anywhere in this neck of the woods that anybody is charging 10.5%. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Joan Burke.
My name is Joan Burke. I live in Canvas Cove subdivision. And I have a few questions regarding how we got to this point. Why are we now just finding out in the last couple of months about the dire lack of income revenue that the city has not planned for the maintenance of infrastructure on subdivisions and commercial developments that you've continuously approved? Did anyone think that it might be a good idea to secure the income stream before you're obligating the city for these future expenditures? I find this to be fiscal malfeasance. Why is it that the only way we found out about this dire situation in the city is when the mayor and aldermen want to negatively impact the quality of people's lives and people's property values in this city? Your plan to fund this city is through absurd measures like this memorandum of understanding here today. There's no leadership or vision in this city. I think we need to just start calling this memorandum of understanding by its real name, the terrible, horrible, really bad deal, because that's what this is. Abatements are bad for taxpayers. I spoke with the appraiser for St. Charles County Assessor's Office yesterday. I asked him his opinion on tax abatements, and this is what he said. Tax abatements affect the whole county and put the burden on the residents. And I think that the opinion of this person who knows the most about the property values as it relates to taxes in this county should be given the highest consideration in this matter. And I wonder, did any of you reach out to him and speak to him before facing this decision here tonight? Another example of how bad abatements are is looking at the property across the corner from this proposed development of Prairie Encore. There's a PNC Bank there. There's many other businesses. Let's just take the PNC Bank property for an example. That property has paid zero taxes for the last 13 years. They will pay zero taxes for an additional 2 years. I don't know if PNC Bank actually owns it. It's owned by an entity out of Chicago, Illinois. Regardless, I think that since PNC Bank earned $5 billion in net profits in 2022, that they can afford to pay either a little more rent to offset property taxes, or they can pay the property taxes. We don't need to be giving this away. I'm sorry, I just have one. I'd like to be able to finish this. I don't personally know the owner at the Corner Spirits on Bryan Road, but what I do know is that they invested in that property, that they pay property taxes of $9,000 a year. I know also that they have spent a lot of money developing that property. And I have to say that I also know that the owner lives in Darting Prairie. And it's a heck of a thing when a government not only goes to war with its citizens, but then undermines their ability to fairly make a living. Because the city is looking at giving another liquor store an unjust advantage over a local independent small business owner who's also a resident of the city. You don't care about that person, and you don't care about that business, and you don't care about your neighbor. All you care about is lining the pockets of these corporations to the detriment of the citizens of Darting Prairie. And I guess that's fine with you people. But I find this shocking, and calling this meeting 2 weeks before the election, I consider this a subversion of the democratic process. There was no reason for this emergency special meeting to be held tonight. The process should have been allowed to continue, have our election, and this could go on your next board meeting minutes or agenda.
That Dredgick?
Board of Aldermen staff, pleasure to be here. My name is Scott Drochnik. I'm been of Lake St. Louis, and also I'm with the Economic Development Council of St. Charles County. And we're pleased to continue our partnership working with this city as well as all the other cities. Before I make a few remarks, I want to point out that one of my board members is on that end of the dais, other one is out in the audience. And I've got at least a couple of committee members that I recognize that are here. A few months back, the EDC hosted a statewide workshop on incentives, and I had the honor to serve on that panel. One of the questions came up was, when do you have the incentive discussion with a potential developer? And my answer was, before the project comes to town. What the EDC has advocated for years is for all of our communities, from the county to the local cities, to have an economic development incentive policy that's in place. We've worked with the city of St. Peters, we've worked with the city of Weldon Spring, and other cities as well have already adopted those. That way, there is a policy, it's gone through the process, there's been public hearing, there's been input, and there's something to appeal to rather than having to figure something out on the spur of the moment. I'm not saying that's what's happened here, but having a policy that's set has been something that's been working for many of the other communities that are in the area. I was able to deliver some of that to city officials recently. And so I'm urging all of you to have that consideration, looking beyond today, but looking to the other opportunities, because I applaud the opportunities and the pursuit that Garden Prairie has to want to grow. You want to provide good services to your community, whether it's road maintenance and road construction, the park and things that the city has got here. And you guys want to find a way to fund that going forward. By having an economic development incentive matrix, you have the ability, if you need to look at it on a case-by-case basis, but you will have set the threshold of what kind of investment, what kind of jobs, what kind of wages, what kind of revenue is going to be there. And then having that opportunity to dialogue with all of the different taxing jurisdictions that are in the area so that they understand what the policy is and what the vision is going forward. That has worked in St. Peters, it's worked in O'Fallon, it's working in Weldon Spring, it's worked in other places that I've had the privilege to be a part of here in St. Charles County and around the metropolitan. And so I applaud the efforts to try to grow and encourage you to have a matrix that we can all utilize, because many times before they call you, they call us and they say, where can we grow? Where is their land? What are the policies? Who do we work with? And so not being able to have that makes it a little bit difficult for us, and I'm sure uncomfortable and difficult for you all, especially in the best of times. Thank you for the opportunity.
David Miller?
My name is David Miller. I live in Inverness subdivision. Folks that have just spoken know a lot more about a lot of other things than I do. One thing I do know is everyone here has an opportunity to shut the door on this, even though we failed to do that last week. What you give to Mia Rose is going to be the starting point for every single developer that comes in after them. Okay? 40 years on the TDD, CID, one or the other. Okay? Living legacy, Mayor. Nice job. Your grandchildren will love paying that extra tax. We don't want to. Okay? Not a good deal for us. Not a good deal for anybody. Of course, I won't be shopping there, so you won't be getting my money. Okay? I bet there's a lot of other folks back there that won't be shopping there either. Okay? Thank you. Okay, Circle K, cannabis sales. Hope we're moving forward with that. Sent you guys an email. Hope you're working on that. Okay? Hope there's regulations. Pray you have regulations to stop this. Bad enough we have Circle K for our neighbor. Even worse if they're going to be selling dope. Okay? Like that in your backyard, Mayor? Okay?
David, I replied to your email and
Okay.
told you there's no chance in the state of Missouri that Circle K will sell marijuana.
Okay.
And you entirely chose to ignore that.
Yeah,
I mean,
just like you talked to the school board too, right? Okay. Hey, one last thing, okay? Three-legged stool, analogy for this opportunity, three-legged stool. When one leg gets a little bit longer than all the others, whoever's sitting on it tips over, okay? You got the city, you've got the developer, and you've got the citizens. Right now, the citizens are getting the short end of that stick. 40 years of a tax incentive to pay off Mia Rose for them to put up a stoplight on Cora Marine. Not fair, okay? You guys got a chance to shut the door. Let's do it tonight. Thank you.
Cheryl Breton.
My name is Cheryl Bratton. My husband and I live on Cruden Bay Court in Inverness subdivision. The information age can take a toll on a person, which is why many adults have taken a cue from the preschool song, Head, Shoulders, Knees, and Toes, and instead they sing glasses, wallet, keys, and phone before they leave the house. It's easy to forget stuff. Therefore, I'm convinced, based on how you voted in favor of Mia Rose, that you were so busy remembering your glasses and wallet and keys and phone, you simply forgot one other essential last Wednesday night, which is the guiding principle of a representative government, the will of the people. A government's job is not to govern, but to listen, not to developers, not to money, not to personal preferences and biases, not to deep, stubborn streaks and egos, but to the people. Last week, Circle K announced its partnership with Green Thumb Enterprises, and no pun intended, will start rolling out cannabis sales in their Florida Circle K locations this year. In fact, Green Thumb CEO told the Bloomberg Business Report that the deal will, quote, continue to normalize marijuana by integrating it with regular consumer products. This is a futuristic deal. How lovely for all of us. If the county's Prop 3 is approved on Election Day, tacking another 3% sales tax onto recreational marijuana sales will at least be one way Circle K can help the city make money while it's busy giving everything else away to Mia Rose. The Economics Development Incentives Policy I distributed copies of last week was never adopted as a resolution by the board. It took me a while to connect the dots, but apparently it's because there's a huge difference between funding limits in the suggested policy and what's in Mia Rose's request for incentives. If you had approved that policy, it would prevent you from granting the extravagant CID, TDD, and Chapter 100 bonds they're asking for. A while ago, another resident quoted Abraham Lincoln so he could remind you that this is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. It very well could be buried in all the research, financial acumen, business experience, the advice of the P&Z volunteers, and correct density calculations provided to you since December, that the people really do know best. But I guess you were so busy governing, you couldn't listen. The next time you're checking for your glasses, wallet, keys, and phone, try to recall your high school democracy class lessons as well. As far as an example of a representative government, you have failed the people miserably.
Bear.
Good evening, Alderman, Mayor, City Administrator, residents. Where and I live with my topic of constant complaints. Tonight, I want to address two of the elements that must be planned into this proposal for the development to live to your promises. Number one is a promise that it will be a financial success for the city in its revenue and also for its residents. It is obviously, as we have heard today, and I am very disappointed to hear about the impact that my city will have in the school district that our children and grandchildren will be attending. Not going to spend a lot more time on the financial success because I know it is a failure. I would expect that you have developed a sound proposition that the sales tax revenue projections have the appropriate assumptions based on the local market and the competition. We at length have talked about and pushed against those assumptions that have been made. Now, regarding the promise of a luxury apartment living, I believe this development falls short in several areas compared to recent apartment complexes in a 3-mile radius. Specifically, the Enclave at Wayne Haven Apartments, the Solstice Apartments, Synergy Apartments, Citrine Apartments, Altair at Preserve Apartments, and the Prairie Luxury Apartments. The square footage of all those complexes range from 682 to 1,950 square feet, and the monthly rental ranges are around 1,135 to 2,805. What sets these developments apart are the amenities that those complexes offer, including exercise rooms, lounges, and most importantly, garages and or covered parking. The Prairie Encore is a 4-story complex with a total of 190 units, an average of 1,078 square feet, and only 4 of those units will be 3 bedrooms and 56 will be 2 bedrooms. Based on the current plan, covered parking and garages are not included. The comment was made by someone on the Prairie Encore project that the demographics of the tenants will be 35 and older, most of them over 50 years old. I have yet to know a 50-year-old or 40-year-old who is paying top-notch dollar compared to all these other apartment complexes that is going to be glad to be going outside and scraping their windows and throwing an electrical extension cord to charge their car for the next 40 years, as long as we're paying these taxes. I know this is not a good proposition either for the assumptions that we're making on who is going to be living in this luxury apartment. Thank you very much.
That was the last speaker.
Hey. New business. A motion, read resolution 368. Oh.
The move.
I'd like to make a comment first. Excuse me. I'm sorry.
Read it. We vote on it?
Before we vote, I would like to make a comment.
Discussion of it.
I was asked by a resident that was not able to be here tonight to read this. I believe it's probably a moot point, but I want to read at least part of it to show the type of company that is moving into Prairie Encore. Alderman, I am writing this to you as a citizen of Garden Prairie. In light of the disappointing vote of approval of Prairie Encore project, I would like for you to be aware of a recent announcement by Circle K headquarters to CBS. They announced they will begin selling marijuana in their stores. Garden Prairie historically has avoided approval of establishments that it has felt is not in the best interest of the city. When permission was given for the CBD shop in Town Square, much was made of the fact it was just a CBD shop and would not be selling anything other than that. Now a mixed-use development at Bryan and Feisey is slated to include a Circle K gas station. I'll not read the rest because we think that we know that it's not possible for that Circle K to sell marijuana in Missouri. But I want to point out that that's the type of company that we're asking to come to the Prairie. Then on my own comment, I apologize for not being there in person, but I've had a trip planned far in advance of this special meeting. This is at least the second special meeting that has been called for Prairie Encore. As it drug through 3, 4, 5 months, we couldn't handle it at our normal meetings that we've had to call these special meetings. I rest. Thank you.
Oh, all those in favor to read it?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I oppose.
Ayes have it. Resolution.
Resolution 368, a resolution of the Board of Aldermen of the City of Garden Prairie, directing the city administrator to execute standing by and between the LLC.
Gonna read it one more.
No, we don't. Resolution.
Resolution only once. My apologies. I gave you incorrect information.
It is on the agenda, but I can read it for you if you'd like. A resolution of the Board of Aldermen of the City of Garden Prairie, Missouri, directing the city administrator to execute a memorandum of understanding by and between the City of Garden Prairie, Missouri and Calico LLC.
I'd like to make a few comments. First, I appreciate both representation from the ED as well as the Wentzville School District. Thanks for taking time out of your schedule down and talk to us. There were a couple of comments I wanted to make in addition to those. One thing Scott mentioned was an incentive plan, which is an amazing idea. And I thought we had taken action on this, but it sounds like we didn't. Sounds like another RBA that
It was presented in December. We had a work session on it. It was not adopted by the board.
sounds like another RBA that I would be sending your way. Appreciate the clarification. But in that work session, I don't remember any big pushback to verbiage, things like that. I did want to just read real quick what the eligible improvements are under chapter 100 in that plan that we had talked about. It says the act permits any city to issue industrial development bonds to finance the cost of warehouses, distribution facilities, research and development facilities, office industries, agriculture processing industries, service facilities which provide interstate commerce, industrial plants, certain other types of commercial facilities. In connection with such projects, the bond proceeds may be used to finance land, building, fixtures, and machinery. The chapter 100 is not really intended for apartment complexes. Now, this is not binding. This is not something that we have to abide by, especially since it was not adopted, but this is aggregate from plans from all over. And I tend to agree with. There's mention of GM stepping in, getting some incentives. And I think 100 would make sense for a GM. GM stepped up and did some great things for the district and tried to improve. So I can't get behind a chapter 100 for multiple reasons. And I understand that tonight's action is not approving. This is a memorandum of understanding saying that we will negotiate good faith. But as Scott also very wisely pointed out, the best time to discuss incentives is before the development comes in. So the earliest that we can come to that understanding and say, these are okay, these are not. I would encourage the board to make very clear that a chapter 100 is not appropriate for the site for the reasons that we talked about. Another one is right now, the school district is, I'm not going to say struggling, but anytime that a school district grows rapidly, they're stressed. And interrupt me if I say anything that is incorrect. But we as policymakers have already seen the lag between policy and receipt. When you talk about new developments coming in and the tax revenue that those new developments are going to bring, along with the additional students, the additional headcount, things like that, you're not going to gain the tax money to offset those students for a while. So the district is trying to play catch up. And every time that we take money away from the district, this one is a very large amount of money that should be put in their pockets. We're putting them behind even more. As it was mentioned with the councilman from O'Fallon, he's absolutely right. All we're doing here is spreading the burden out to other cities and not taking on our fair share. So I am strongly opposed to the Chapter 100 specifically, because I think that that is vital. The property taxes, the real property taxes are vital to educating. And we cannot cut their legs out from under them. Yes, it's said that because the profile of this apartment complex, it's not going to bring in any students. We heard that in Prairie as well. We heard there's no students out there. There's no kids. There's no additional burden to the district. Well, Mr. Angevine put me in contact with the director of transportation for the district. And I did ask, she was driving when we spoke. She wasn't able to provide me a number for the Prairie. But she did say very, very resolutely that she knew that there was a bus picking up on Cherry Blossom every day. There are children there. There is additional burden to the school system. We have to make sure that they continue to receive the revenues. As I look through the proposal, I don't know that we need to subsidize developers' activities, the for-profit activities of developers, though I do think that we have some burdens here that are outside the norm. Two of them that I see, one is the extension of Fort Marie Drive to finish off Inverness and gain that necessary access. Development the size of Inverness will not do well with only one access. It's a safety and security concern, so I fully support that. And I think that that's an extra burden that isn't normal in development. And then second is improvements there at Bryan and Feisy that will definitely be necessary as there's already a traffic problem. Both of those, in my estimation, can be handled with a CID and a TDD. I would like to limit this to CID and TDD conversation. And as we move forward, we get into the details of those because we still don't know what the requirements are for Fallon. That's frustrated even more by the fact that we don't have a current traffic plan. We're still operating off a traffic plan that says we're going to have to expand Bryan to 8-9 lanes and do crazy stuff. So we don't have a good estimate on what that's truly going to cost. But I do believe that we could probably cover that with a CID and a TDD and leave the Chapter 100 out of it as it is an appropriate slot. And I am going to leave it there, but those are some items I'd like the board to consider before we cast our votes on this. And emphasis go to factors. If this is voted down because there's agreement that the Chapter 100 is not appropriate, then I would urge that we bring it up amended without the Chapter 100 mention in there at the next meeting.
Okay, anybody else? Justin, did you have something?
I think one thing I would certainly like to know before we get to any final agreement on this is also just sort of what the projected potential impact of personal property taxes would be. Obviously, here we're talking about excluding real property, but what would be the net impact of those? I think it's an important thing to look at as we look at the overall. And then I think, kind of what I've said before is as we look at those numbers, then I think it is at that point incumbent on each alderman to decide, looking at what do you think the future holds? What do you think something's waiting in the wings, or do you think it's going to be 10 to 12 to 15 years before that property gets developed? And what's the overall impact on revenues to everyone, including the schools? And that personal property side, with at least to the target market, is that number may be significant that would be given up by not doing anything. I think it still comes down to that balance of what do you think is going to likely happen? Is it going to sit vacant for 15 years or not? And if EJ is making comments, I can't hear him.
I can't hear anything.
I think his mic might be muted.
You guys hear me up there? So I knew that my decision would be unpopular, but it's firmly rooted in what I believe is best for our city after considering the totality of the circumstances. I don't expect to change anyone's opinion, but I feel it is important to inform all of you how I arrived at my decision. As board members, we are faced with making difficult decisions, and decisions on development proposals are often the most controversial that we must make because they have an acute impact on nearby residents. I wish it was as straightforward as appeasing nearby residents, but it's not. City government is business, and cities are in the business of providing services to their residents, and services must be funded. The primary revenue generator for a city is sales tax, which means that commercial development is a critical component to funding city services. However, not all commercial developments generate sales tax. For example, office buildings, service-oriented retail, schools, and churches do not generate sales tax, and schools and churches are tax exempt, so they do not generate property tax revenue either. In addition to any one of those uses would present similar building massing issues with the surrounding residential developments at this site. Looking back just 4 years ago, the city of Garden Prairie had approximately 168 acres of prime undeveloped land at the northwest corner of Bryan Road and Feisey Road. In June of 2019, the city approved the rezoning and PUD request for 106 acres of that land for residential development that is now Inverness Phase 1 and Phase 2. Subsequently, the city revised its comprehensive plan that is still in effect today, which called for all of the Bryan Road frontage to remain commercial. Then in December of 2021, the city approved another rezoning and PUD request for 48 acres for residential that is now Inverness Phase 3, leaving only 14 acres of difficult to develop land for commercial development. The Planning and Zoning Commission voted unanimously in favor of this request, contradicting the newly approved comprehensive plan. So here we are with a difficult decision to make. This development presents a cohesive vision, will generate necessary revenue to fund city services for the future, and will pay for city infrastructure projects such as Cora Marie Drive, a signalized intersection at Cora Marie Drive and Bryan Road, expansion of the Feisey and Bryan intersection to alleviate traffic congestion, and will dedicate the land that is necessary to expand the right-of-ways along Feisey and Bryan. The development plan maintains the existing creek and tree buffer, which could be eliminated because the western property boundary of the development site extends to the far side of the creek. Turning this development away is a roll of the dice that I don't think pays off. For years, the city has attempted to attract commercial development to this site to no avail, and the ground that remains undeveloped is less attractive today than it was before. If we were to deny this development, we are likely to get something less cohesive or a use that does not generate any revenue. In addition, we will soon have future residents living in Inverness Phase 3 that will likely oppose development as well. Lastly, the topic of development incentives. Development incentives are an economic development tool used to attract or retain business operations and promote new business activity, among other things. Many of our peer cities utilize them, and the city of Garden Prairie should utilize them as well to maintain an equal playing field when it comes to attracting development and revenue. But for development incentives, sales tax generating development of this magnitude on this site is highly unlikely. The upfront public infrastructure projects that the developers will fund are substantial. The property tax abatement will offset the additional carrying costs resulting from those extraordinary costs borne by the developer. That said, I've advocated for a reduction of property tax abatement to 12 years, and that has been agreed to by the developer. During the abatement period, they will continue to pay their share of emergency services, and upon expiration of the abatement, they will pay 100% of property taxes, which will be substantially higher than the property taxes that are currently generated by the property. The TDD and CID are in place to allow them to recoup infrastructure and extraordinary costs, but they must take the upfront financial risk and will only receive repayment from the districts if their commercial development generates sales. This aligns their interests with the city's interests. After the eligible costs are recouped, they will receive no additional revenue from the districts, regardless of the time frame that they are allowed to be in existence. This project proceeds, I encourage residents to stay involved, to provide additional input on design and aesthetics, as architectural elements are not fully approved and subject to further review and approval by the city. Thank you. I am. So I have an intimate, hey, and let me tell you this, I've received 0 development incentives for any of my developments. So when I scrutinized this development, I went through every single piece of it, all of the financial projections. And I wanted to make sure that they were not getting a handout, and they are not. They are taking off.
Don't even answer.
I'm not.
We're done. Okay? It's not a question and answer session. Okay, is there any other alderman? I'm asking you, I'm calling you to order, please. Okay?
Listen, why would you like? I'm done.
Yeah. Bennett.
I am affected by it.
Is there any other alderman that would like to speak? Okay, like, motion to approve? Or,
Move for a roll call vote.
No, you don't need a roll.
no, you don't.
Yes.
Okay. If someone, okay, did I hear a motion for a roll call vote?
Yes, move for a roll call vote.
Who made the motion?
Dave Wandling.
Dave Wadley. Okay, Dave, do I have a second? Okay, got a second. All in favor of a roll call vote?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Kim, will you call the roll?
Alderman Wondling,
No.
Alderman Underbach,
Aye.
Alderman Sansone.
Aye.
Alderman Riley.
Aye.
Kate,
Alderman Riley, will you repeat? It was hard to hear.
Aye.
Alderman Johnson.
Aye.
Alderman Kessler.
Okay. Like it was 4-2, so the resolution is approved. Staff communication, city attorney,
I have nothing there.
city administrator,
I have nothing further.
alderman.
Reminder to everyone, April 4th is election day. There are a number of things on the ballot aside from the alderman. Make sure you inform yourself, do your research, and vote as your conscience directs you.
Okay, need a motion. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Okay, got one? Got a second? Dave? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.
I agree. Thank you. I appreciate it. But it's out for important as hell. It is. It's just a tough decision. You know, but I wish.